We're going to be doing 1-point perspective. Particularly, we'll be doing an interior space. You see this ruler up on your screen. I only have it here to try to create some clarity for a moment. The ruler in this case, in fact for most of this section of the drawing class, it's not about measuring things, it's about being a straight edge. You could take a piece of your paper, fold it in half, hot dog style, and use that hard edge just like you would this ruler. We're not measuring things by inches or half inches. We just need a straight edge. I'm actually working digitally right now. I do want you to understand that this ruler that you see, I'm going to get rid of it. And instead, when I'm using a ruler for this demonstration, what you will see is a purple line like this. That is my ruler, straight edge. So again, we're about to do a 1-point perspective interior space. So to start this, we want to create a line about right here. Just follow along with me. We're going to create a far wall that is about a third the size of our drawing. Line right here. Set up my ruler. I'm going to connect the top and bottom lines. That is our far wall. It is parallel to our view. So now we need to decide on where our vanishing point is. And our vanishing point, it should be at eye level. So if you're laying on the ground, your vanishing point is really low. If you're sitting on a chair, it might be about there. Again, we're talking eye level. And if you're standing, your eye level maybe is up here, depending on how tall you are. Let's pick a vanishing point that's right about there. And I will put a VP for vanishing point. This is the most important point in all of our drawing. We've got our far wall. Now we need to turn it into a three-dimensional space. And to do so, we're going to take our ruler, line it up with the vanishing point, and extend it through the corner, any corner for the moment. Take your pencil and go from that far corner outward. Now we're going to move where the ruler is. Again, from the vanishing point through one of the corners. Now we're just drawing from the corner outward. Move your ruler. Again, don't forget you have to line up with the vanishing point. And you'll draw from the next corner of that rectangle outwards. And here's our last corner. And again, you have to line up with the vanishing point. So you're lining up the vanishing point, which is up here, and the corners of that rectangle. Let's draw this line outward. Alright, so you can see we've created a three-dimensional space in 1-point perspective. At the top here, we've got our ceiling. You only have 3 options. Your lines can be vertical. That's up and down like this line. They can be horizontal. That's flat like this line or this line. Or they can be lined up with the vanishing point. There are no other options. So a line like this, that's not going anywhere. That's not an option. There are exceptions to this, and I'll show you in just a second here, but anything you're building, if you're building a doorway, a piece of furniture, a window, all the lines that create them have to go one of these directions, vertical, horizontal, or to the vanishing point. So with that in mind, let's create a window. So we'll get out your ruler and let's do a vertical line over here. Remember, my ruler just happens to be purple. Again, we're talking, you can use an actual ruler, a folded piece of paper, creating a hard edge. I'll keep saying ruler, but we're really talking about a straight edge. Anything with a hard straight edge that you can draw along. So I'm going to create my vertical line. Remember, vertical, horizontal, or vanishing point. Line my ruler up so I get another vertical. How wide I made this window doesn't matter. It's entirely up to you how big you make your window. How tall, again, these are just arbitrary heights. That's just what I chose. What's important is the next step. Let's check out our ruler. Go from our vanishing point, and from here you decide, alright, how tall do I want the upper part of the window? Let's say right there. And draw your line that connects them. Same with the lower part of the window. We'll line up with the vanishing point and connect those two verticals, and there is the bottom of our window. Again, we can erase lines that go beyond where they should. So let's say I want a door over on this left wall, and I want the top of it to match the height of the top of the window. Line my ruler back up with the top of the window. With my pencil, I'm just going to make a little dot right here. I'm going to move my ruler, make sure it's parallel to the line above it. Make another dot here, and break out my ruler one more time. Come off the vanishing point through that dot. That tells me where the top of the door will be, and that top of the door is going to be the same height as the top of the window. So while we've got the ruler in place, we might as well create a line. We'll use our ruler, create a vertical here, draw it in place, move our ruler over, and it looks like a good size for the door. Draw it in place, erase the excess lines if we want. Let's add some thickness to this wall where the door is. We're going to go from here, horizontal. I'm going to make the wall about that thick. Now just to be sure, because the top of the door angles upwards as it comes towards us, again that's because of perspective, I think we're going to see the top, or the underside of that door area. So if we go horizontal, from there, yep, we end up with a wedge shape. So let's give that some line. Let's just say the door is this thick, or the wall is this thick. Now we need to have a line that shows the underside of that wall. We're going to go from the vanishing point through that corner. Hopefully you can see how this wall is parallel to this wall. They're both facing you directly. So we've just happened to have given thickness to this wall over here. Now this line might not make a lot of visual sense anymore. If we have a flooring of one sort over here and a different flooring over here, that line might be just fine. It also doesn't seem to make sense that it looks like this space over here is limitless. Like if I walked into here in the direction we're facing, looks like I could go forever. Let's say that's an exterior wall, in which case this line right here would extend visually into the next room. We're just going to make it equal to the main wall we started with. And to really open up those two rooms, I am going to get rid of that line. So the next thing I want to show you, I want this window to be the kind of window where you lift up one of the parts. So it's split in half from top to bottom. Take your ruler and go from one corner to its opposite. Lightly draw in part of that line. We're then going to move our ruler and go the opposite pair of corners. Again, draw in part of that line. Now we just need to cross over the first part of this X that we've created. And this intersection here is literally the center point of the window object. So now if we line our ruler up between the vanishing point and the center of that X, that is the center of our window. So now we can get in here and show for real that split between the top and the bottom. If you didn't notice, when we created that X in the center of here, those were lines that were not part of they were exceptions to the rules here. And we'll find other exceptions, but usually those exceptions are for measuring things or for creating objects that specifically have an angle to them. So here we are with our three-dimensional space using 1-point perspective. We have found the center of an object and split it in half. We have added a window and a door in perspective. We have transferred the height of something over to another wall. What if we want something that's in thirds? Let's see. We'll do it as a light up here on the ceiling. Let's draw a line about right here. It's going to be horizontal. And another one above it. We gotta actually draw those in place. We need to line up the sides with a vanishing point. Again, your only options are vertical, horizontal, and vanishing point. So we're on the ceiling now, and we're doing horizontal lines. That's the closest line to us, and that's the furthest line from us. Our only other option here is the vanishing point. So let's move our ruler. From the vanishing point, we go out to the other side of our light fixture. Alright, so this is a little more complicated. We've got our space for our three-part light. Again, we're dividing this into thirds instead of half. First, we're going to start out with finding the center again, but not quite for the same reason. There's the first corner-to-corner line. Notice I drew the entire line this time. And there's our next corner-to-corner line. Now we're going to take our ruler through the center of that X, and what we need here is a dot. So not a line, we're figuring out where the center of this top line is. So we go from here to the lower. Think of this as a 5-pointed star, because that is basically what we are creating. You'll see it in just a moment. We're going to do that line, move the ruler again from the center on top to the opposite corner on the right. There is our 5-pointed star. What's important here is this dot and this dot. So I'll do a little circle around each. Everything else can be erased. Let's do that real quick. What we do then is run a line. So use your ruler and line up the vanishing point and one of those two dots we created. There is 1/3 of this panel. Use your ruler again, vanishing point through that second dot. There is the second third of our panel. So that light fixture is divided into 3 equal sized shapes. One more thing. We know how to do 2 objects, like in over here, this window. We can do 3 equal objects, like we just did on the ceiling. 4 would be easy, right? Because we would just split each of those in half again. Find our new center points. How do we get 5 equal or more objects, especially uneven numbers? How do we get 5 or more? Let's get out our ruler. We're going to start out with some lines outward. Now, we want to have space for multiple objects. We need 5 would be good. So we're going to start with a fairly small one. Now, we need this line to be parallel to the one above it. So it's horizontal. If you're not sure what parallel is 2 lines that run alongside each other, but that distance in between never changes. Alright, so we've got our first section. Let's draw that in. We do need to find the center of our first section. We do that, of course, by creating that X again. There's our center. The difficulty here is how flat that area is. The center is somewhere between those two, so try to make a very good educated guess. Be aware that it is fairly important to get it pretty close. So using our ruler, line up with the vanishing point, go through the center. This line is going to be very light. We don't need it to be dark. We just need it as a guide. So this is, again, the fence method. Once we get moving here, you'll see why it's called that. You could easily create a fence based on this. So we're going to come from a far corner, go through where the center line intersects the second line of our object, continue, so careful that you don't lose that center line right there. This dot will be where our next object is. So I need to line the ruler up horizontally here again. Draw a new line. Use the ruler. So we started out in this section in this far corner. So we're moving ahead 1 corner. Again through the next intersection with the center line. Be careful that you don't get off that center line intersection. And where you hit the far opposite line. That's our new spot. We'll move the ruler. That gives us another horizontal. Notice how each of these sections is getting just a little bit bigger each time. So there's 3, 4, and 5. Oh, I hope I got room for the 5th one. And again, we've moved ahead 1 section. Far corner there. Intersect through the center line. Here's our far side. Create a little dot. There's the edge of our next item. We've moved ahead another section. Far corner through the intersection just barely still on our paper. Look at that. It's right there. Move the ruler. There is the edge of our 5th equal section. So using that method, every one of these sections is equal. They're getting bigger looking because they're closer to us in perspective. The center line, when you're done, no longer needs to be in place. And this initial X for finding the center doesn't need to be there anymore. So that was the fence method for finding multiple same-sized objects. Alright, the last thing I want to show you in this very first 1-point perspective drawing is how to begin building other objects within the scene. We're going to build like a love seat sort of couch. I should have enough space for that. I want horizontal lines coming out from the wall. What we are doing is finding its footprint. So how much space it takes up on the floor. So we're going to move the ruler again. If this is the closest side to us and this is the far side from us, we're now going to find the front of our little love seat. It has to be based on the vanishing point. It certainly isn't vertical, not yet, and we used horizontals to come out from the wall, so our only real option here is the vanishing point. Connect those two horizontal lines. Remember again, this is the floor, so now we've just created the footprint. Let's look at something else really quick. That window might end up getting drawn over slightly. It's not a big deal. Happens in reality. You might have a chair that blocks part of a window. So I'm going to do a vertical up the wall. Not sure how tall I want it yet. Always give yourself a little extra height just to be sure. From this point also up the wall. It's really close to the edge of that window. Again, not a big deal. Do be aware that in this 1-point perspective space, the closer objects are to you, the viewer, so right at the edges here of your drawing, the more warped they're going to look. That doesn't mean they're wrong. It just means that the perspective is such that the close objects are going to look pretty warped. Not a big deal. Alright, let's find the height. So the top of our chair, let's say it's right there. We are cutting off the bottom. At least I am. Your window might be different. I'm cutting off the bottom of my window. Again, not a big deal. Erase anything that's confusing or in the way. We need to build onto this little chair now. So what we're going to do is fold up the seat part of it with some verticals. This could be however long you want it, as long as it's vertical. Just make sure you give yourself enough, because once we go through the vanishing point, we got to connect to something. Any extra can always be erased. Speaking of vanishing point, it's time to find the top of the front of our chair. Try not to go through where there's other lines. Don't want to confuse yourself. This vertical doesn't connect to that back line. So either go above or below. I'm going to make it kind of a low seat. I'm going to go right there. Let's remove our ruler for a second. Easy to confuse yourself if you let there be too many extra lines. We're not going to see through the front of our chair. not this particular chair. So these lines can go away. Anything within this front rectangle. Really, we're not going to even see this or this line, but let's not get too ahead of ourselves. I'll show you in a second why I know that. So now that we've created the front of the chair, at least the part we sit on, we're going to go from this corner here horizontally to the wall. Move our ruler to this other corner, again horizontal to the wall. Let's move our ruler one last time before we do some erasing. We've created two new points here and here. Those are at the wall. We just need to finish off the top of the seat, and to do that we're going to go through the vanishing point, through this line. If we did everything correctly, we should also line up with this point, and it looks like we did. So there's a new line here. Now we've got a bunch of erasing we can do to help clarify what we're seeing. We would no longer see beyond this side, and we're not going to see down into the top, at least not with the type of chair we're creating. All this extra stuff could go away. And there's the platform or the seat that we would be sitting on. Alright, so we've got this nice cushion to sit on. We probably want some sort of a back to it to lean against. Now we do have to be careful that we don't run into this line and make it the front of the back of our chair. That's going to look odd because it's going to line up with a corner of the room. We don't want that. So we're going to make this, we need to make this backing either fairly thin, so it just comes out to about here, or we need to come out even further, which makes it quite a thick back. That's entirely up to you. Grab the ruler. From this point I'm going to come out from the wall, and it needs to be horizontal, and I just need it to come out a little ways. Move my ruler to this other corner and come out from the wall. Again, make sure it's horizontal. Be sure to come out a little extra far. You're not sure where these two lines are going to connect. It's probably going to connect way back in here, but just to be sure, give yourself a little extra. Now we need the ruler again, and we're going to connect, and this will be the top of our chair. And that's right there. So let's erase some stuff that we wouldn't see. We're not going to see down into the top of the chair. And this was drawn out too far. What we need to do is use our ruler and come down from this point, this time vertically. There's our line. There's such a wide angle on these two. This might be a little less accurate, so I might want to come from the vanishing point and go through that line, and let's see how that lines up. It's going to be close. Even if we didn't do it perfectly, it's going to be very close. Move our ruler one last time. We should vertically match up. Oh, we are off just a hair. You might be as well. I might actually try to split the difference between those two. Ultimately, once we finish this off, you won't really notice that there was any problem. There's our last vertical line. We will erase extra things that we wouldn't be able to see anyway, and we won't see that. And there is our seat in one point perspective using our vanishing point. Alright, give that a try. Hopefully you follow it along and we're able to get all of it figured out. The next step will be to make your own one point perspective space. So let me know if you have questions.